I saw from day one as seeing the entire Texas Triangle as an opportunity for plug and play to be involved, across all four major cities. So that really laid the kind of overall groundwork. And then the Dallas-Fort Worth region was clearly the biggest market of the four from a corporate concentration perspective. And we actually found McKinney through looking at innovative players that are already doing work with startups. You already had, like you said, the Innovation Fund, a number of resources that you provide to entrepreneurs, and the proximity to kind of the greater Dallas-Fort Worth region. And what I learned from meeting you all was that a lot of those executives that work at these big companies also live in McKinney.
Yeah.
So I think, it became a natural kind of match.
Hey, welcome to another episode of McKinney Momentum. This is our podcast by the McKinney Economic Development Corporation, where we connect you with businesses, local leaders, projects that we're working on. And today I'm excited about, my name is Luke, by the way. I'm the marketing manager here at the EDC. And I'm excited to pull back the curtain a little bit and talk about an Innovation Fund adjacent project that we've been working for a while. It's with a team called Plug and Play. They are a startup accelerator venture capital firm out of California, and they're relocating here. I would say they're expanding here, and you're going to hear more about how they integrate large corporations with small startups. And they've invested in some large companies like Google, PayPal. These guys were at the forefront of those investing rounds, and it's exciting to partner with them with what's happening here in McKinney. Like I said, building on the foundation that the Innovation Fund has been laying for the past 4 years. So today, our Senior Vice President Michael Talley interviews Kevin Parakkattu, who is one of the partners at Plug and Play, and talks about how we do that. Distill down, how do you, as an organization, Plug and Play, how do you connect startups to large corporations? What does that look like? And we've got two major announcements that have just been made regarding Plug and Play. Number one, they're launching a vertical for enterprise and AI here in McKinney. They're going to connect corporations with enterprise and AI startups. And then another one in partnership with the Frisco Economic Development Corporation, working on one for fintech, financial tech, right? And so we're going to have some cool stuff that's already come out. I'll put links here in the show notes, whether you're watching or listening. There'll be some links to the press releases that we've published. Additionally, there's some FAQ content. How does this work? How does this establish what we're already doing with the Innovation Fund? Is there any overlap? All of that is answered on our website. So I'll put the links to that in the show notes. Be sure to check it out and enjoy this interview between Kevin Parakkattu and Michael Talley.
Let's talk about what Plug and Play is first off.
Yeah. So at a very high level, ultimately what we do is we connect people. So what that means is we connect, mainly startups. So those are kind of technology companies, usually anywhere from 2 to sometimes even larger companies, to large corporations. So that's companies that you and I work with every day, like HEB or, an insurance company, wherever it may be. And essentially what we do at our core is we're saying, hey, corporation, you face many challenges as a business, whatever it is. Maybe if you're a retailer, maybe it's how to manage your store employees, or maybe it's something you're feeling with inventory. And we say, hey, you're facing these problems. Let's introduce you to solutions, which are startups. And on the other end, on the startup side, there's all these amazing entrepreneurs, and that may not be what what one may think of as an entrepreneur, meaning a college kid coming right out. It might actually be someone that has a family and is actually going and worked in industry for 10 plus years and is now going ahead and starting a company addressing a problem that they faced when they worked at a big company like that.
Right.
And essentially what we do at the core is connect those two people. There's a lot of other things we do, and then we ultimately, of course, want to invest in those entrepreneurs. We've been fortunate now to invest in 35 different kind of what we call unicorns, so companies worth over $1 billion in valuation. Companies that you and I, also use every day. Companies as historic as Google and Dropbox, or PayPal, or newer players like Honey, which saves consumers money at the checkout, or Rappi, which is Uber for Latin America, and several others.
So talk about the model of Plug and Play specifically, though. So, in the incubator, accelerator world, there's seems to be many options out there. Some do it great in some opinions, some not so great. Some have failed. Some are highly successful. I think like Plug and Play.
Yeah.
Talk about the unicorns that y'all have invested in. So talk about that model across the industry and what the difference is with plug and play.
Yeah. So I mean, I think taking a step back, right? So the accelerator word, what that word means, is really saying that this is a kind of a fixed program, usually anywhere from 3 to 6 months, and the idea is that a startup, an entrepreneur, or his or her team will join that respective program, and then quote unquote accelerate their business. So when we started Plug and Play, it was really looking at that and seeing that there was a lot of resources for those very early entrepreneurs. That, hey, here's how you go from your business from 0 to 1. How do you get your business plan into an actual product, etc. How do you get your co-founder and all of those materials? And what ended up happening, and to your point, was a lot of players came into that space without any real clear differentiator. However, when we started talking to entrepreneurs, the biggest challenge wasn't necessarily getting your business from 0 to 1. That is challenging, of course, but once you get there, it's now what? Now it's how do I scale this company? How do I connect to my future customers, especially if you're not from that world? So where Plug and Play really sat was saying, hey, you have that business model ready, you have that product ready. Now let us help you as an entrepreneur scale. The other biggest challenge that we saw with entrepreneurs and accelerator programs was that they were pretty aggressive in terms of the fees that they would ask, the ownership that they would ask for an entrepreneur to be involved in your program. So for an example, kind of a cookie cutter accelerator model would be saying, hey, I'll give you $100K to invest in your business for 5% of your company. And so the entrepreneur would give up 5% of their company, which sounds, very small. But as you kind of go throughout the different financing processes, that becomes a large aspect of your business. And it wasn't really clear what that 5% was delivering. So as time went on, accelerators and incubators were generally, critiqued. Like, what actual value do you provide? So what Plug and Play did was, our program is entirely free. We don't ask for any equity. We don't charge the startup any fees. There's no hidden costs. For most entrepreneurs, it's a no-brainer. We give you access to the right person at the company that you've been looking to speak with, and we don't ask for anything in return from you. If you like Plug and Play, and we also like you, then we can talk about investing.
Right.
But that's not required off the bat.
Right. Well, and I think that, what we do with our innovation fund is the same type of model. So when we have those conversations where traditionally someone will say, yeah, we'll give you this dollar amount for this percentage, we don't take equity. And it's non-dilutive funding that we put out for our innovation fund companies. And our equity is them coming here, growing here. So I think one of the things that attracted us about Plug and Play was that very model that you guys are involved in, or structure you put in place. We started talking about I guess almost a year ago now.
Yeah.
Plug and Play and McKinney EDC. I would say it was easy, but it wasn't necessarily that easy. A lot of back and forth, a lot of dialogue, a lot of meetings, a lot of meetings with leadership to get something to the finish line. So talk about that process, and because you guys are working with a lot of different communities now. You haven't been in Texas until really middle of last year, which was very surprising to us, considering what your full kind of network is across the world. So talk about that process, and what was that like for you and your team?
Yeah. So I mean, the process and the story actually starts with me personally. So I had moved to Texas, to Austin in March 2021. From the Bay Area. I was part of that headline for sure. And
Hey, we'll take them all. Bring in the talent.
Luckily, McKinney's welcoming. So I had moved to Texas in kind of March 2021. And shortly after, kind of saw the opportunity that lied within the state. At that time, Plug and Play had about 5 or so U.S. offices. I had spent kind of about half of my Plug and Play career just starting up offices across Europe and Asia. And when I came to Texas, I really came for personal reasons. And then it was kind of a light bulb moment, was like, how do we not have a presence in the state? And And really, what had just happened at that moment was Tesla and Oracle had moved, to Texas as well, and then that shifted the Fortune 500 concentration from California to Texas, meaning Texas is now the leading Fortune 500 state. Someone should fact check me on that. So I personally moved, saw the opportunity, also got some inbound pressure from my boss and our CEO, Saeed, to go ahead and start something. So I partnered up. My background's in investing and so forth. So I partnered up with our team, Sharif and Michael, who sit on our partnership side, to really kind of understand how they work with EDCs and so forth. And we really kind of saw from day one as seeing the entire Texas Triangle as an opportunity for plug and play to be involved, across all four major cities. So that really laid the kind of overall groundwork. And then the Dallas-Fort Worth region was clearly the biggest market of the four from a corporate concentration perspective. And we actually found McKinney through looking at innovative players that are already doing work with startups. You already had, like you said, the Innovation Fund, a number of resources that you provide to entrepreneurs, and the proximity to kind of the greater Dallas-Fort Worth region. And what I learned from meeting you all was that a lot of those executives that work at these big companies also live in McKinney.
Yeah.
So I think, it became a natural kind of match. McKinney had an interest in startups, so we didn't have to teach anyone about the importance and value of helping entrepreneurs. You already were doing it. We can, if anything, accelerate your existing efforts. And then lastly, it just made sense and probably going to be one of our larger offices in the entire world, just given the amount of corporations that are in the greater Dallas-Fort Worth region.
Yeah. The Innovation Fund was put in place in 2020, and even before I came onto the organization, I was noticing what was happening here. I was next door in a neighboring county, and other communities were noticing what the Innovation Fund was doing because it was a new program, a new structure. How did we get this put in place? How are we getting the board and council to be open-minded to looking at these new initiatives where there is some more risk involved, because it's not your traditional investment structure or incentive structure. So continuing on our side to put the resources in place to help startups and companies succeed is the main goal. One thing we've gotten in the past is, well, what about when other cities want to get involved? So when we've gotten involved with Venture Dallas, and we've gotten involved with Dallas Startup Week, and GSEC was Global Consortium of Entrepreneurship Centers. And we say, bring them all on board. If the more communities that get involved in the Metroplex, the more it raises up our visibility, not only just in the U.S., but worldwide. There was a recent article that came out a few weeks ago about tech talent in DFW opposed to Austin, where the media loves to cover Austin. You live in Austin, love to hear your feedback on this. But we have twice as much tech talent, than Austin in DFW, with 8 million in population. So what are your thoughts on that specific?
On Dallas versus Austin?
Yeah, as far as tech talent and what the media likes to cover, but what the reality is?
Yeah, they're gonna kick me out of Austin if I say anything
No,
bad.
no, they won't. We've got a place for you here. So
So like from my observations, I think the Dallas-Fort Worth greater region, by sheer nature, will have stronger enterprise technology talent, meaning folks that are likely coming out of the larger companies that are based here, whatever you want to name, AT&T, Southwest, et cetera, have been in industry for 10 plus years and have lived and breathed a problem that they're now trying to fix. So these entrepreneurs, I think, will come out and create amazing enterprise technology companies. And I think what they need is access to investors, access to kind of a founding team outside of themselves and maybe their co-founder, and really kind of, overall kind of access to scale. And that's where I think the Dallas-Fort Worth region needs support. In the Austin region, I think it's somewhat kind of the opposite, where there are a lot of entrepreneur resources in the Austin region. I think there's probably over 10 or so accelerators, incubators, et cetera, in the Austin region. Mm-hmm. And, UT obviously being just a powerhouse for their computer science program, et cetera, obviously brings in a lot of, talented younger students. So I think what happens in Austin is you have more companies created and kind of more landing grounds for them to be, but they're not necessarily maybe the content, the talent concentration that you'd want to scale an enterprise technology company.
Right.
So both are good markets. I think both have their respective unicorns in different spaces entirely. I think if I was, necessarily kind of building an enterprise technology company, I would probably go for the Dallas-Fort Worth region, just given, your neighbors are
Yeah.
every corporation you probably want to go after.
So you are running for office. That was a PC answer. Well, what I'm getting at is in a couple minutes is collaboration.
Right.
I think when we talk about what we're going to be focused on here as far as a vertical or industry, as I like to break it down for people, and that's enterprise and AI. Why do you think that's important?
Yeah. So I mean, you can't. I mean, if you work in technology, and even if you don't, like my mother, who's a nurse, was asking me like, "What is this AI thing, and should I be worried about it?" And like my mom doesn't.
Yes and no, as you said.
Yeah.
Right.
My mom got like an iPhone last year. Like she was rocking a Razor for the longest time. So to give you a context of where she's at with technology, I think as we see it is, AI has been around for 20 plus years. It's not a new concept in any way. I think it's gotten more of the headlines today because of where ChatGPT and stuff has made it very palatable for you and me, where you could take a photo of your fridge and it'll tell you, a recipe you should make. So that's made it very obvious. Okay, cool. So here's the applications that we can use. However, large corporations have been testing, implementing this stuff for years, but now I think it's the public focus has renewed the, let's call it private or corporate focus on how do we use applications of AI in their respective businesses. I think if you're any large corporation today, you're not saying, am I a tech business, yes or no? You're saying, how will I become, how will I implement technology into my business?
Yeah, because it touches everything.
Yeah.
That's what we talked about here internally as far as, what is the best vertical to focus on. And I mean, AI being what it is and what it will continue to be is going to, it's going to continue to be in every industry. It's not just going to be
Yeah.
AI itself, I guess, is how you look at it. Back to what I was mentioning earlier about collaboration, I think in our world or in any industry, there's competition. And in our world, we talk to our counterparts in our neighboring communities and around the metro and around the state. And one thing that came in to this discussion was working with Frisco EDC and what that could look like with a collaborative effort to really push up not only our communities, but Collin County, and then overall the metro, the DFW Metroplex. So from your side, how did that feel? How fast did that move? Did it move slow? Did it move fast? Because there was a partnership that was put into place to really potentially launch, our vertical focus, Frisco's vertical focus, and then a third vertical potentially here in the future.
Yeah. How it felt, it actually wasn't that painful. So, I mean, we actually even had this internal discussion, right? We were talking to McKinney, we were talking to Frisco separately. And I think both of you were aware that we were talking to the other. And it was, hey, should we kind of bring those conversations together? And it was, hey, do we want to play United Nations here? And will this, the risk that we took was we don't know the respective city politics, any potential baggage. We're not aware, right? So, but uniting the forces, will that eventually destroy
Both.
anything? Both.
Yeah.
You
just don't know, yeah.
Like we're just naive and we knew that. We took the risk because, like you said, it's the Dallas-Fort Worth region for this office and the Frisco office and the overall initiative to be successful. It needs to be a regional play, despite
Right.
the competition between cities and so the healthy competition between cities.
Sure.
What we're doing, which is ultimately, like I said, connecting people. There are no borders to connecting people, and there can't be any animosities and so forth with that. So we proposed it, and I think the beauty of both EDCs is that they move quick. relatively speaking.
Well, in my opinion, I think we did, and I think Frisco did, and we were able to set up a lot of meetings very quickly with
Yeah,
leadership here at the EDC in the city on both sides,
yeah,
and that was a game changer. And having a relationship with our counterparts, you know, myself, Mike Wilkes, Mike Kowski, you know, the I guess consortium of Mikes,
yeah,
you know, have a good relationship with Frisco and their team, with Jason Ford and Gloria and Jeremiah over there. So yeah, all those things help. But really wanted to kind of get a feel for what the opinion of plug and play was, because you back to what you guys do throughout just the U.S. alone, and then globally, and the relationships y'all have put into place is just massive. Talk about the scheduling coming up, kind of what the plan here in McKinney is
yep.
um, over the next few weeks and through the spring.
Yeah, so I mean, first off, quick plug if you're a listener and you're looking for a new role in technology and startups, check out our job page and be sure to apply to some of the open roles that we have left. We're hiring about 10 or so people across McKinney, Frisco, and the Shared program, which is a fintech program.
Right.
So, as we think about our process, so number one is hiring. We have support from me in Austin and then folks in California and so forth. But to really grow and be a community player, we need community hires. So that's number one right now and kind of top urgency. Number two is space, having a physical space where entrepreneurs can live, thrive, build their businesses alongside hopefully some of the corporations that are there as well. And then our timeline wise is we're launching in mid-March. We plan to have a selection day where 25 or so companies are pitching to an audience of corporations, investors, executives, et cetera, members of the community. And all of those companies are kind of best in class, applicable to their audience, and are really kind of seeking the same thing, which is to scale their respective businesses.
Right.
And they may not be from Dallas-Fort Worth. And that was always the thing that we said from day one is we're not trying to be a Dallas-only program. We don't think that will help Dallas-Fort Worth grow. There will be Dallas companies that are showcased here, and we want to make sure they have access to the resources, and McKinney companies in specific. But I think part of the reason why you all want to work with us is that we're able to attract companies from anywhere in the world, as long as they have an application here. So mid-March launch, we'll run our first cohort of companies, which should be around anywhere from 10 to 15 companies based on the application. Those respective startups will have some sort of relevancy or a lot of relevancy to an anchor group of corporations that will act as the voting body, but more importantly, the potential customers of those startups. So over those 3 months, what we anticipate is they're having advanced discussions, they're hopefully piloting, and then, hopefully at the end, they're having very serious discussions, and maybe some of them are actually going into paid contracts. Corporate sales work obviously pretty slow, so we're ambitious. And then at the same time, we're hopefully investing,
Right.
across Frisco, McKinney, et cetera. And again, in local companies and companies that we've brought in that are now hopefully creating a presence here because they've seen a lot of value and their eyes open to the Dallas-Fort Worth region entirely.
Can we touch on, and I know you touched on the corporate partnerships with the startups and you try to connect. Can you dig a little deeper on the corporate opportunity? Because we want to open that up to not only corporations in McKinney, but across Collin County and the rest of the Metroplex, to where if there's an opportunity to get in with plug and play, get connected with startups that can bring solutions to problems in their businesses, I think that's a huge opportunity that
Yeah.
we'd love to allow y'all to
Yeah.
expand on.
So to give you some context on that side, right? So Plug and Play now works with over 600 Fortune 1000 companies from all over the globe. And why they partner with Plug and Play, what that means is their C-level typically sign off on their contract. It's on minimum a 3-year engagement, and they designate a respective team to work with Plug and Play on their challenges. And what Plug and Play essentially does with these corporations is, one, we go in with our team, we identify their key problems. Maybe they've already done that and they've done a lot of that work. We triage them, so we prioritize them based on kind of what they think will have highest impact to the organization and lowest cost or whatever it may be to get there. And then we basically use that as a planner and say, all right, cool. So, all right, insert organization name. Let's focus on our staffing issue as an example, because we're facing staffing shortages all over the US. And then we'll use that as essentially the material that we then find startups on. So then corporations are facing these challenges. They're typically looking at other big companies for their solutions. And what we're saying is, hey, there's all this new technology that you don't know about. There's thousands and thousands of companies. We'll find the best one that fits exactly what you need and introduce you. And what we hope for is that in that process, you're able to find a solution to your problem. The other big value is that you're sitting alongside your peers in industry. We're one of the few platforms in the world where it could be peers or it could be actually direct competitors. We have Mercedes and Porsche that sit next to each other, Pepsi and Coke that sit next to each other. Name two kind of, I mean, if we, with our new sports tech vertical, maybe it's the Red Sox and the Yankees sitting right next to each other.
Right.
But they'll face those common challenges. They'll work together. They'll, respect their respective confidentialities. But that helps those respective people at those companies learn from one another, saying, oh, wow, my direct competitor or my peer in the industry is working on so-and-so. I have never even thought about approaching my business like that.
Yeah.
That often becomes a huge but valuable part of plug and play. Whereas you don't need to necessarily find and work with a startup. Maybe it's just learning from one another and seeing how you can adapt with one another.
Well, and I think a lot of people do understand that, but the people that don't, I would highly recommend you just attend a summit that Plug and Play puts on. We had the privilege to go to the Winter Summit back in December, and myself and Mike Wilkes, and I walked in that first morning, and maybe there were 500 or 600 in the same room, but there were thousands there at the facility. You're talking a building the size of our building, and y'all have the entire building with Plug and Play staff and corporate partners, and you see those things happening. You see these corporate partners sitting next to each other. I remember one of the corporate partners got up and spoke, and I think they had over 10 startups that are bringing them solutions to their problems. That's massive. I mean, you're making those connections, sitting in those roundtables with the CBCs, and really understanding what problems they're seeing with, and like you said, I mean, the Chick-fil-A's, the Red Bulls, these massively large companies are sitting next to each other, trying to bring solutions to their problems across the industry. I think that's massive in what y'all are doing in bringing, just people together and connecting people to solving problems.
Yeah. I mean, to give you an example, right? I mean, we work with Mercedes. And if you drive a Mercedes today and have the latest software, the MBUX software, there are about 10 or so technologies from startups that Plug and Play has introduced to Mercedes over the years that are in that car. So there's a real-time impact of this. Right. It's as simple as connecting people, but it can be as profound as honestly changing these entrepreneurs' lives. When they sign a deal like that, their business is 2, 3, 10x overnight. And then they become major employers, major beneficiaries. Those entrepreneurs themselves often do well, and it's kind of awesome to see the impact of that as well.
Yeah. Well, from the EDC standpoint as an organization, we want to continue putting the resources in place to not only help our larger companies, but also the startups of the world, the new technologies, the new ideas that are coming to the table. And we really think the partnership with Plug and Play is just another piece of that puzzle of success and getting those startups to succeeding here in McKinney.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael, and the entire EDC city. You guys are a pleasure to work with, and you have some of the best steak in all of Texas.
Good to hear. Thanks a lot, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Wow. I hope that fired you up for what's happening with here in North Texas with tech, particularly McKinney and partnered with Frisco. I mean, there's some cool stuff happening. And when you told that story about the Mercedes having the technology integrated from startups, I mean, that's exciting stuff. What can happen with our startups here in McKinney that are being connected to these large corporations? And it's going to be fun to watch. So I hope you stay tuned. Again, the links for all the stuff we've talked about are in the show notes here. And if you want to see more content like this, I hope you'll follow, subscribe on YouTube or whatever podcast platform you listen to for more of McKinney Momentum. We'll see you next time.